And now I am pleased to be joined by a man who played 14 seasons in the National Football League as a wide receiver with the Arizona Cardinals, San Francisco 49ers, Baltimore Ravens, and the Detroit Lions. Ladies and gentlemen, Anquan Boldin. Please join us here on stage, Anquan. I'm used to being the best looking guy on stage. Today's a challenge. Today's a challenge. How's it going, man?
Going good.
Good. I only read half your bio, man. I want to read the rest of it. I'm sorry to embarrass you, but key member of the 2012 Ravens Super Bowl team, recipient of the 2016 NFL Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, and someone who's now using his platform to be an outspoken advocate on criminal justice reform. So thank you. Welcome to the stage. I got 5 to 6 questions to ask you. What motivates you? Like, you come out of this amazing career, there's a million things you could be working on. What gets you fired up about this issue?
Honestly, there's a lot. Coming into this season, my mind was nowhere on, retiring and focusing on criminal justice reform. My mind was completely sold on going out and doing my best to try to win another championship. But over a period of time, seeing what transpired in this country just didn't sit right with me. A lot of things didn't settle right with me. And then I can remember being in training camp with Buffalo and seeing, okay. I was in the dorm. We were having training camp. And just seeing the images go across the screen of what was happening in Charlottesville. And for me, it was like, man, enough is enough. Like, this country is in a horrible place. And I feel like I can be doing a lot more than catching touchdowns or, whatever it is, winning games or whatever. So I just felt led to do something else. Criminal justice reform is something I had already been working on prior to. I had a tragic accident in my life. I lost my cousin at the hands of an officer after he broke down on the side of the road. So I think for me that kind of, began the cycle of me thinking about things past football.
And so even during your career, as you said, you've already been outspoken on this issue. You had a trip to speak to congressional leaders. Can you tell the audience a bit about what those conversations were like?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to go and testify before Congress, kind of put together a panel of about 5 or 6 other players. And for me, I like to say I was kind of groomed into it. Even before I got into criminal justice reform, my background is in 501c3. I've done a lot of work here in the United States, and I've also done work in Haiti, Senegal, Ethiopia. So I had a chance to testify before Congress about mining laws in Senegal. So that kind of prepared me and helped me in this journey with criminal justice reform. Like I said, I got together about 5 or 6 players, and we had a chance to go to Capitol Hill and testify before Congress. And for me, it was a way to show players the platform that they had and a way that they can use it in a positive way. So for me, that was a way to educate them and also make a difference in this country.
And so there's a lot of people now who are saying sports players should stick to sports and shouldn't be focused on these political issues. Have you encountered folks that have given you that sort of pushback?
Definitely, but I think it's one of the dumbest statements somebody can ever make. Us as athletes, because I'm an athlete doesn't mean I stop being an American citizen. You still want me to pay taxes. And they take out a lot for taxes. So, to think that an athlete should just stick to playing football or politics shouldn't be involved with sports, I think is crazy. Because I haven't seen anyone reprimand the NBA for snatching the All-Star game from Charlotte, or the NFL for taking a Super Bowl out of Arizona because they didn't want to honor MLK Day. So for you to think that athletes should just stick to sports, I think it's crazy. We're American citizens. You want us to vote, you want us to sell shoes, you want us to, sell different products, cars, whatever it is, but when it comes to things that really matter, you want us to stay quiet.
So this year, athletes have decided to take a knee as a way to speak out on racial injustice in America, and that conversation has spiraled into a conversation about whether they should take a knee, whether they shouldn't, as opposed to focusing on why they've taken a knee. At this point now, when you think retrospectively about where we've sort of ended up on the issue, do you think that it has advanced the conversation or actually set us back?
I think for those who really have an ear to listen, I think it has advanced the conversation. For those who want to push things to the side and don't really want to deal with the issues, I think the narrative has been hijacked. So it's gone from racial inequality and justice for those who are really fighting for that, and for those who don't want to pay attention to those issues, it's gone to players being unpatriotic, disrespecting the flag and the anthem. I think it's a great thing that athletes are speaking out, because every time athletes speak out, they have an audience. Platform is huge. So I think it's only right. And for me, that's one of the reasons that I did retire, because I felt like in a league that I was participating in, we weren't getting the help that we desired. In a locker room, you have all different sorts of people that come from different walks of life, and they all come together for one common goal, and that's to win a championship. And no matter what the person next to you looks like, you all call each other brothers. Coaches call, the players brothers, owners call everybody brothers. Well, now we have brothers who are crying out for help because there's injustices going on against them, against family members, against people in their community. But when those guys are kneeling and crying out for help, I didn't feel like the rest of the brotherhood was helping them, was hearing their cries. So that's one of the reasons why I stepped away.
Is there a price to pay for a black man in America of your success speaking out on these issues? And what does that price look like?
I think that price looks like Colin Kaepernick. I think what Cap did was commendable. And the reason why I say that is because I lost my cousin a year prior to Cap kneeling. This was like 2 years ago. And it seemed like no matter how much I spoke out about it, no matter how many stories I tried to get out there, nobody really wanted to pick the story up. It was more local papers. They'll, do a story here and there, but mostly it got pushed to the side. So felt like my voice was being, was falling on deaf ears. And then lo and behold, a year later, Kaepernick takes a knee and the whole country's in an uproar. You can't escape the conversation now. You go to a barbershop, you go to church, home, school, grocery store, wherever you go, this conversation is present. And I feel like it's something that we have to deal with as Americans. So I feel like him taking the knee was, had I known it would have brought about that much attention, I'd have been taking a knee a year prior too. But I definitely think that it's something that needed to be done. I think it's something that needs to be addressed in this country. I think for far too long, we've kind of swept it under the rug. And although we had a black president in office, even with that, there was still a lot of the same issues, racial, inequalities and injustices that were happening right in front of us. One of the best things that could have happened was Trump being president. And the reason I say that is because now this issue is to the forefront, and we have to deal with it as Americans. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. When Obama was in office, everybody wanted to pretend everything was great. But now that Trump is there and people feel empowered to, act on these racial inequalities and these injustices, I mean, we have to deal with it as Americans.
Can you bring your cousin into this room by sharing his name?
Corey Jones.
Thank you. So as someone who's working on criminal justice reform for the last decade and a half, people often ask me, well, if we change our criminal justice system and something else emerges, help me understand what that something looks like. Do you have a vision for what a more fair, just, and humane criminal justice system might look like?
What, a more feared?
A more fair, humane
fair. Yes.
criminal justice system.
I mean, when we think about America and, we salute the flag, and we do that with the idea of justice for all. And I mean, everybody in here can tell you that's not what happens. I mean, you can see a person of color and a person, a Caucasian person, commit the same crime but get a different sentence. To me, that's what, to have somebody commit the same crime, get the same punishment, no matter race, color, creed, religion, whatever it is, that is fair to me. To see people held accountable for their actions, that would be fair to me. We have a long way to go as Americans. And although we like to say how great our country is, I feel blessed to, grow up in this country, because I've been other places, and trust me, I don't know if I would make it. But with that being said, I don't think America is as great as we want to make it out to be. America isn't as fair as we want to make it out to be. So I think we have a lot of work to do as American citizens to make this country the idea that we pledge to when we pledge to the flag.
Tell the audience what the Q81 Foundation is and the Players Coalition, please.
The Q81 Foundation, I started probably about 13, 14 years ago. It was my second year in the NFL, and it was pretty much my way of helping underprivileged kids. I grew up in a less fortunate area where there's not a lot of opportunity, so I understand what it feels like to go without and to have lack. So it's always been a dream of mine to help those who don't have the opportunities that others are afforded. When it comes to the Players Coalition Act, this is just a group of players who's trying to bring about change. We're trying to use the platform that we have, and we're trying to leverage that to make sure that those that are above us get involved. There's real concerns that we have, and those are things that we're trying to fix. And as players, we feel like it's our obligation to step forward. I think for far too long, you've had athletes kind of be selfish. And when I say that, like, I've made it. There's certain things that don't affect me, so I won't, get involved in that, because I might lose endorsements, I might lose whatever it is. But I think it's time now where guys are at a point in time where they feel obligated to use their voices for a bigger cause.
Is there anything that this audience can do to support you in your work?
Yeah, I think there's always ways that you can support. Through my foundation, through the Players Coalition. There's a lot of efforts that we're getting behind now, and we're trying to get with groups that are fighting these injustices around the country. And that's what we've been doing for the past year. We've been working with Senator Cory Booker, who was just on, and a couple other different senators and congressmen as well.
There's a Torture Island about 12 miles from here I want to talk to you about when this is over, Rikers Island. I'd love to talk to you about our efforts to shut that place down and create a smaller, fairer jail system here in New York. How do you not, the majority of your peers, I think you would agree with me, propel themselves into stardom and don't look back. And where does this come from with you? Where's that fire in your belly come from? Well,
for me, I realized that the success that I have didn't just come from me. I think everybody that'll tell you, anybody that's ever been successful has had to have help from someone or someplace. And I realize that, and I understand that it's my job and my duty to help those that come behind me. So I have people who I've grown up with. I have family members who are still in situations that I don't think are right. And I think it would be selfish of me to not pay attention to those.
I'm going to ask you the same question again. Where does that come from?
I was raised that way. Mom, dad. Like I said, I come from an area where there's not a lot. We have this saying where I'm from, we were poor growing up, but we didn't know we were poor because everybody around us was poor. But even in that, my mom and my dad, they found it in their hearts to help other people. People that weren't related to us. If they needed a meal, they always had it at our house. If they needed a place to lay their head, doors was always open. So I've seen that growing up my entire life.
I want to open it up to the audience for questions. I want to ask you one more question before I open it up. If you had an audience with the President of the United States, what would be your message to him?
How long would I have? Man, where would I start? I think the thing for me, man, is in the position that I am now, like, I try to help people to understand, like, to step outside of yourself and, like, put yourself in somebody else's shoes and try to walk in their shoes. Like, it's easy for me to sit back and, being in the NFL, like, there's a lot of things that might not affect me. You know what I'm saying? Because of where I live, because of the money that I've been able to accumulate. So there's a lot of times, like, I might get pulled over, and then when a cop recognizes who I am, it's like, oh man, can you sign this for my son? Whatever. But I really understand though, like, had it not been for me being in the NFL, that interaction could have went a lot different. So where I am now, I try to get people to step outside of where you are. You know what I'm saying? Walk in somebody else's shoes. Try to understand the challenges that they have on a daily basis. And then you will gain a different perspective of life. And I would challenge that, to the president. I mean, he doesn't come in contact with common folk often. Like, there's a lot of, his family would never experience injustices or inequalities. Step outside of the White House. Step outside of Palm Beach. I'm from Palm Beach County. And trust me, there's a difference between Palm Beach and West Palm Beach. Step outside of that and go 2, 3, 4, 5 miles away and see reality. Because what he's living isn't reality.
Thank you. I want to open it up to the audience. We have about 11 minutes for questions. Someone has the mic? It's hard to see from here, so can someone just grab the mic?
Hands.
Hi. As someone who's obviously played in the NFL, you understand dynamics between fans and owners and teams and money. How can we as fans support the athletes who are kneeling? I feel like if you boycott a team, that might send a message to the team, but maybe that ends up hurting the players individually as well because they're paid by these teams or owned by these teams. So what's the best way that we as fans can actually go ahead and support players who, like you, aren't retired but are trying to take a stand on some of these issues?
I think there's a lot of guys in the NFL that have foundations that are geared towards different causes. So that's definitely one way. I was asked the question, should people boycott the NFL? And for me, I think that's individually based. That's based on how you feel. And I know a lot of people now are hearing that, the NFL is trying to make guys stand for the national anthem. One thing I would caution people is don't listen to the noise. Like, there's a lot of conversations going on around, and I think the message has been hijacked. What guys were originally kneeling for and protesting about is getting lost. And that's one of the things that I hated that happened when Trump came out and, called players SOBs if they kneel or whatever. And then you see all of these owners come in, and then they lock in arms, and then it's about unity. Completely different than what the original message was. So the thing I like to caution people is don't pay attention to the circus going around it. Understand why guys are kneeling, why guys are protesting, and get behind guys in those causes.
I think Adam had a question. It's already answered. All right, someone else? And then I'll switch to the other side.
Hi there, my name's Davis, and I work with the National Network for Safe Communities at John Jay, also from Palm Beach County. So I know what you're talking about. I went at my high school. The street started in the projects in Riviera Beach with notoriously high crime rates, and then just 20 feet up the road would become one of the most glamorous communities in the state. So thinking about those inequalities puts a really helpful framework on this conversation. And what I wanted to ask you about is how athletes and how people in the sports industry can help use their position, their privilege, and their notoriety to change the perceptions of those who are involved in the criminal justice system, to help change the language that is used to describe people who are system involved, to help promote positive images and themes like restorative justice, and what sort of steps can be taken on an individual level, if not at an organizational level?
I think for NFL players, athletes, period, I think guys are a lot more socially aware than people think. I know when people hear athlete, they think, jocks or whatever, but I think there's a lot of guys that are really doing work, getting behind different legislations, guys that are helping put the right people into office. And guys have been doing work on a local, federal, state level for quite some time. Those are the stories that don't get told. I know anytime a player gets in trouble, it gets blasted everywhere. Everybody hears about it, but nobody hears about the ride-alongs that we do with police, or us sitting in on bail hearings, or us going to visit different prisons, and actually educating ourselves on what's going on in this country. Like I said, there's a lot more players than you know. Like I said, we have a coalition of probably about 50 players right now that are actively involved with the day-to-day works. And there's different organizations that we work with that help educate us about, which policies to get behind, and where to, put our efforts. So until that story gets told, I don't know if it'll ever change.
Question on this side?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Genevieve Citron. I'm with the Justice Programs Office at American University. First off, I just want to thank you for taking a stand in your leadership and using kind of your national platform to highlight this issue. What we've seen in mainly the NFL, but in some other sports leagues as well, is a lot of athletes of color taking a stand or taking a knee. But a lot of studies have shown the importance of the messenger. And when we're talking about this issue, a community that really needs to be educated and learn more is the white community. So I'm wondering if you have been engaged with your white colleagues, how they have, if they've been receptive, or how they have looked to, I know you mentioned that you sort of felt that you weren't supported in your brotherhood as part of the NFL, but I was wondering if there have been individual colleagues who have been supportive and how they've kind of been receptive to this.
Yes. When I say I feel like we weren't supported when it came to the brotherhood, I was talking more about from a management level, more owners, coaches, GMs. As far as white players, there's been a lot of support from white players. Actually, one of the original members of the coalition was a white player, Josh McCown, who's the quarterback for New York Jets. As soon as I called him up and told him about going to D.C., he was like, whatever you need, I'm there, just let me know. And that's the thing, you know, we have relationships in locker rooms. Josh is a guy that I played with for 2 years in Arizona, which was probably about 11, 12 years ago. But we still had that relationship, and we help each other out on different charity events. He calls me, I'm there. I call him, he's supporting me. And that's the way it is in the locker room. So we've gotten a lot of support from white players, but there's also been concerns from the white players as well. And the reason why a lot of them haven't stepped out front and center is because, number one, they don't want to say the wrong thing and hurt the message. So although you haven't seen them out front and center as much, trust me, they're behind the scenes supporting as much as possible.
We have about 4 minutes left. There's a question over here.
I appreciate all the work you're doing on my fantasy team. So I want to make sure that given that sacrifice we've all made, that we put in good work. So I'm from Texas, football reigns. And so I wouldn't be doing my job as an advocate without saying, how can we connect with you to get you to come down and talk to the people that matter in Texas who will listen to football players more than they'll listen to their preachers?
Wow, we need to get new churches in Texas. No, I'm just playing. I'm definitely available. I have contact information. If you really want to get in contact with me, I'm more than willing to help out in any way that I can. For me, this is not just something that I just jumped into. It's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I want to see change come about. As athletes, we're very results-oriented. And for me, winning is seeing results. So that's why I'm here.
I think we have time for one final question. To someone on this side? Adam.
I appreciated your question about sort of the co-opting of the original message. But as someone who football saved my life growing up, I'm wondering what we do about Jerry Jones, and specifically this Sunday and the message that was sent. I know it was like part of the co-opted message. That's why this happened, but we can't turn a blind eye to the fact that black men have carried that team for a long, long time. And here's an owner saying, I will fire you if you stand up for your rights. What would you say to fans, to your brothers on the field, about what we do this Sunday? Just watch the game and let it pass, or is there something else that we can do just about? I'm not even talking about for the season or for the long term. I'm talking about Sunday.
I think every time somebody says something outlandish like that, like people get in an uproar. And I think the best thing to do is just to remain calm. Like I said, when Trump said what he said, like everybody went crazy. But I think when people go crazy, like the message gets lost. The players no longer control the narrative. And that's what I've been trying to preach to players over and over. Like no matter what the NFL says, like if the NFL wants to try and make guys kneel, first of all, they can't. It has to be collectively bargained. So if they try to put that into action, they will have a huge lawsuit on their hands. And the NFL knows that, so they will never do that. And that's the thing that fans don't know, that players do. Owners are actually in a vulnerable state right now. We as players, we understand that. At this point in time, players are at the most powerful position that they'll ever be at in the history of sports. Because owners will do anything at this point to get players to stop kneeling because they feel like it's hurting their bottom dollar. That's how you get owners' attention. Everything else they don't care about, but when you start hurting their pockets, you have their attention. Now they're at the table asking players, what do we need to do to stop? So when everything else is going crazy around, don't pay attention to that. You know what I'm saying? Let that, yeah, he said what he said, but players are at a point in time where they can make the most change. And trust me, you have players right now who understand how powerful their voice is. They understand the power that they have at their fingertips right now, and they're ready to use that power to create change.
So we're out of time. I'm looking out onto an audience of my colleagues, my peers, folks I've worked with for the last decade and a half, many who've been doing this work a lot longer. And this really is the leadership of the work that's been happening in this country to end mass incarceration and to create a more fair system. And at the same time, it is quite a thing for me to come across a person of your privilege and your access who's decided that this issue is important to him. And so I would say, and I think folks in this audience would agree, that we hold ourselves out as a resource to you as you do your work, as partners to you in your work. But I wanted to thank you publicly before we stop for your investment and your courage on this issue. Do you have anything that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Well, for me, I'll just continue to fight, and I'm looking forward to working with you as well. Like I said, we have a long road ahead of us. We have a lot of work to do, but I'm not afraid of work. I mean, I've been doing it my entire life, so.
And you're outcomes driven.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Anquan Boldin.
Thank you for that amazing conversation. I'm going to invite Carol Mason up to the stage to close us out and to close our conference here.
I'm waiting for my stool. Thank you. The perks of the presidency. So you folks who are still here, you are troopers. Thank you very much for still being here. Let's give yourselves a round of applause for staying. Hopefully others who had to leave are live streaming, but Ed, come back out. We had a promise. So I told Ed that I would only do the closing if he allowed me finally. I've been trying for years. Come over here. I've been trying for years to say thank you to him. So please join me in thanking Ed for all of the work he's doing. So Ed was kind enough to say that he had a steering committee and that he and Carter and I were co-equals. That's not true. He carried this, he did this, and what he did was wonderful. I hope that you all have been as energized by this conversation, motivated by this conversation as I have. And for those of you who know me, I think I've taken 50 pages of notes just in the last 2 days. And that's because there's just so much good happening, so much to learn. And those of you who know me know that I'm always going to see the glass half full. I'm always going to see the rainbow in the midst of the storm. And you all are that rainbow. You all are that hope. And people asked Senator Booker earlier for some hope about what's happening in the country right now. You're the hope. And I am so energized about what we are going to do collectively and what you're going to go back to your communities and do. What you've heard today is that we have the power. We have the voice. Now, I wanted to talk about some other things, some things that we made investments in over the last 8 years, that there's some question about whether those investments will stick. And I'm going to name a couple of them so that you can make sure that the way they stick is you demand them. You all control the power. We have the power as citizens of the United States. All of us have the voice and the power to make sure that the folks that we elected to serve and represent us, because that's the thing to remember, is they represent us. They don't dominate us, they represent us. And it's our job to make sure that the tools that we need to be able to make our community safer still exist. So I'm going to give you a list of things that you need to make sure that you go back and you push. Second Chance Pell, which is making sure that people who are incarcerated have an opportunity to get an education. When I was at the Department of Justice, we funded programs to support children of incarcerated parents. There's grant money that goes out every year under the name Children of Incarcerated Parents. When Senator talked about Danbury and the relationship between the women and their children, we are piloting a program at Danbury to keep the women in Danbury connected to their children and 2 other male prisons across the country. Children of incarcerated parents. You heard the data about how it makes a difference, not just for the child, but for the parents who are incarcerated when they are connected to their families and their communities. We heard the connection about people who are victims also becoming entrenched in our criminal justice system because no one ever dealt with the trauma affecting them. Male survivors of violence. Male survivors of violence. These are just 3 examples of things that we funded that should not be dependent upon who's in office. And they won't be dependent upon who's in office if you all use your voices to raise your voices to make sure that our criminal justice system lives up to the ideal that this country was founded on. The Attorney General, when they used to always say that we were the department that was founded on an ideal and represents an ideal. Well, justice is an ideal that we're going to see realized because of the work that every one of you all is already doing and will continue to do. So do not be discouraged. I need you to leave this room, running out of this room, to continue doing the wonderful work that you're doing. So thank you for being here, for staying, and for your colleagues that had to go. Make sure you share the message with them and share the notes. And if anybody wants to know what was happening and what happened, I'm happy to share my notes as well. But everything was videotaped, and we'll archive that, post some of it on the website. But thank you for all that you do and all that you will continue to do to make sure this country lives up to the ideals on which it was founded. Thank you.